I'd had the experience of being gaslighted, but had I done it as well? And when I removed that victim blaming, or that blaming of the people who had gaslighted me, what I could see was, if I took away all of that, I'd gaslighted myself. Like, I'd made it okay that this behavior had continued for many, many years. And I'd done everything I possibly could to survive it.
People would argue there are facts, there are truth. There is truth and there is fact. And I would say there's not. There's only your truth and your perception of facts. The very first thing to do in the very first episode is introduce who you are. Where, like we said, we're talking about everyday gaslighting, what it is and how do we do it. I'm Jess Claire. I take a keen interest in cults. I've watched every Netflix documentary out there on cults. There's probably more out there I haven't watched. And I've done personal development programs. I've experienced myself being in cults, but they're not really cults, but like that experience of kind of being in something you don't want to get out of. I have a religious background, very similar, was in the Mormon church. And at 8 years old, I experienced myself thinking I was going to go to hell if I didn't stay in the church when my parents broke up. My family is still in it. So I'm fascinated by what it is that has us get stuck into things that we think we can't get out of, one. And then that's what when I was speaking to you, I went to Nathan's book launch, and he is writing a book called The Art of Gaslighting. And he's going to, in that book, there's a broader context, but I will say it's almost like a how-to guide in gaslighting. Obviously, it's out there to make a difference, but in the context in which he writes it, it really is how to gaslight people really well, as it turns out. It's a really great how-to guide. And I saw him doing that. I'm writing a book on cult following influence. I work in tech and marketing, and I'm very fascinated by marketing in particular, and just how marketing is used to absolutely convince and persuade you into buying things. So it was just I just thought this was a great opportunity for me to sit and talk to Nathan. We've talked many years about this stuff, but actually do a podcast. So introduce yourself, Nathan. Who are you? Why are you doing this?
That's cool, Jess. So some of those things I didn't know, so that's really cool. I'm just so you know, I'm really pleased to be here. Like, I love talking about this stuff, and I'm so pleased that you want to talk about this stuff on a podcast, and we can just like get into it.
Yeah.
I feel it's really privileged. I just love talking about this stuff. So I'm Nathan Ahern, and I have been fascinated with why people are the way they are for my entire life. Like, it's probably the earliest memory that I have of my experiences. Just like, why am I this way and why are they that way? And I never worked out how to give it up. Like, it's just always there for me. I've been writing the book Art of Gaslighting for solidly for 2 years. And I just finished the first draft of it on Friday. So 3 days ago. I love that book. It's the culmination of about 30 something years of research happening for myself. I just love this subject. I love why people are the way they are. What has us be this way? What's the difference between us and other alive things in the world? I just find it fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like talking to Jess about this stuff. Or anyone really, but Jess asked, so
yeah.
Too bad. Got to talk to Jess now.
Okay. Well, I want to get it out there too. I think, like I've said to you when I went to your book launch, and I went, this conversation is so incredible. And I want to jump into it because nothing annoys me more on a podcast than two hosts talking about nothing for a long time. So we will jump into it. So tell me,
Yes.
I want to explore this thing you said at your book launch.
Yep.
And that is fundamentally all of your research boils down to one thing.
Yep.
People do not know the difference between what is real and what is imaginary.
Yes.
And I love to explore cult-like behavior, mostly because of that experience I had when I was 8, when I'm 8 years old, and I can reflect on that as a 40-year-old now, 42-year-old, and go, how is it that as an 8-year-old, I actually believed I was going to go to hell? My whole life was about being in fascination with guilt, shame, worrying about what I was doing, to the point where it took up everything. Like, it took up my whole consciousness as an 8-year-old. And I didn't really bust out of that until I had one conversation with this atheist guy who told me that not everyone's a Mormon, and there are people out there who, and I think I was 12 when he told me that there are people out there that don't believe in God at all. And I had one thought, and that was simply, oh, this isn't like what everyone thinks. And as soon as I had that thought, it disappeared for me.
Yeah.
And I went, isn't that interesting that it took 4 years for that to happen to me as a 12-year-old? And then I look around and go, this is happening everywhere. Why is that, Nathan?
Oh, that's a great question. It's definitely, should I qualify where I found that or how I came to that conclusion? Or should you want me just to talk about why it is that people don't know the difference or the nuances around that?
I think definitely start with where you came to that, because that'd be fascinating.
So I've always been fascinated with this behavior I didn't know was called gaslighting until I discovered the word gaslighting, and I was like, oh my goodness, like this is it. This is the word. Like it's not the word, it's the behavior I've been looking for. And then it was really clear to me that there was something missing, but I didn't know what it was. So then I had to go on this journey of discovering what it was that gaslighting really was, as opposed to what we thought it was. And that led me to reading the original play Gaslight and all the variants, and watching the movies, and looking at all the different behaviors that I'd come to. And it was really clear to me that there was some flaw in human beings that allowed gaslighting to operate. And it worked on everyone. Like, I have seen some incredible gaslighters operate in my life. Stuff that's you just couldn't believe that someone would believe, like the truth is right there in front of them, and they believe this thing that's not even this story they're being told. And at some point I saw for myself that we're just not taught to be interested in reality, or the difference between what's real and what isn't. Now, is it that we don't know, or that we're not intrinsically like born with the ability to go, this is reality, this isn't? But it really, really led me down this path, or this discussion about what is reality. How come we don't see reality for exactly as it is, and everything else that isn't? And so I got to that point and I was like, holy moly, that is literally how gaslighting operates. It's the fundamental flaw through which it operates all the time. And the answer's been always in front of us, which is that we're called human beings. It's just, gaslighting does not work if you're just a being. It's just, it doesn't operate. If you only exist inside a reality, it just doesn't operate. But the line of what's real. Pardon?
What you mean by that, just so I clarify, because do you mean like a tree is a being because it's alive and it's sort of just sitting there dealing with everything? You can't gaslight a tree. It's not going to do anything about it. But because we're human beings, and so say a bit more about that.
Well, yeah, tree doesn't have an opinion about reality. Maybe it does. Maybe it has an objective experience of reality, but it's generally just observing it. There really isn't. It's not really interacting. We have this incredible imagination. It's our number one. It's the most powerful weapon. And when I say weapon, I don't mean like something to attack another human being. You can use it for that, but you can also use it to attack anything, including any problem you decide. It's the most powerful weapon we have, and it's also our biggest flaw, because our perception is skewed by it if we're not responsible for it. Or our perception is actually skewed by the structures in our brain that skew reality. Our amygdala is the thing that grabs hold of information as it first comes through and decides whether we should be in a fight or flight response. And if you can wire it into your upper brain, into your memories and all those sorts of things, the amygdala operates like they're real, like those memories are real. And yeah, that's pretty much sort of the fundamental reason why we can't distinguish the difference. Information is interpreted before it gets to what I would call us, and us is in the top part of our brain, and our lower brain is just like quite a primitive piece that we have in common with many other animals.
And from our discussions, what you were saying, and I'm sure this can be validated with psychology as well, and that this sort of happens almost like 100% of the time. It's going through this filter like instantaneously. So whatever we're perceiving in reality is actually not really reality.
Nope. Well, it's even worse than that. our perceptions are not real. They're just our perceptions.
Yeah. And some people would argue, and this is the part that I always love to have this discussion.
Yes.
Is people would argue there are facts, there are truth. There is truth and there is fact. And I would say there's not. There's only your truth and your perception of facts. And they'll go, what about science? This is a table. This is, everyone goes into those sort of arguments. Yes. And I said, in the moment, in that very, very slim, very momentary moment, there's a fact that gets assigned. And if you have a very clear speaking person answering a very clear question asker, you will get a fact emerge for that moment only. And what I mean by that is when someone says eggs healthy, and then a bunch of scientists go off and study for 3 years in a longitudinal study, and they'll ask a set of questions and they'll test this on a number of bodies. And in those moments that occurs, there's this moment where a scientist interprets the data and then will say, the fact is that I looked at these human beings and there is an 80% risk of heart disease when they ate eggs or didn't. And that, for that moment only, that's a fact, which is that his research indicated something, his or her research. That's a fact. But everything else, you don't think that. I think everything after that isn't a fact. I think it's just a person saying that they observe something is the fact. But
sure, but is that a fact? See, the problem with the word fact is overused. Like there's what happened.
Yeah,
you know, there's the study I created. You know, and the scientific method is based on agreement, which is great because at least then you don't get caught up on opinion. But just because you use a scientific method doesn't mean that you've created a fact. You've just discovered that correlation may equal causation.
Like it's a structure for being a little bit less nebulous, or maybe a lot less nebulous. So it gives.
What do you mean when you say nebulous?
Like science for me provides a structure.
Yes.
So it gives us a way in which we can find patterns in the world that make sense and can answer some questions for us in the moment. If we want to know if something's healthy or not, and we go searching for whether it is healthy to eat dirt, we can have a method in which to test that hypothesis, essentially.
Yeah, someone worked out a long time ago that we have a tendency not to believe our own imagination. So maybe we should test it with empirical evidence.
Yes.
First, maybe we should get connected to reality, even if it's just some empirical evidence. It might not even be true. I think the word truth is incorrectly used in science because they talk about laws and theories. At best, that scientists is eggs healthy thing is a theory. It's not a law. It's not a truth. And I think they just use it incorrectly. Like it's in some way, shape or form, I think people do think that there's truths. And unfortunately, that's not a good idea. Like E equals MC squared isn't even a truth. Einstein's thingamajiggy. We've all had a good look at that.
Yeah, I think.
That's not to say that, sorry.
No, you go.
Well, it's just, I don't want to get caught up on this because it is really easy to get caught up in like, what is the truth? Like there's this continual and constant debate. Like it needs to be like there is only one way things can be.
But
that's a dangerous place.
That kind of proves what you say though. The fact that for all of time and probably for the rest of time, we will all get caught up trying to find truth, prove truth, convince each other we know the truth, actually demonstrates what you're saying.
Yep.
We don't know the difference between what is real and what is imagined, and we will forever be trying to prove the truth because there is none.
Yeah, we're infatuated with it.
We are infatuated with truth because we see something other people can't see because we live in a state of we don't know what is real and what's imaginary. And so as a result, we will forever be arguing our point about something that doesn't really exist.
Yep. That's how gaslighting works. That's you leverage that flaw.
And it doesn't matter how much I know this, Nathan, how much personal development I've done on my own self-awareness, I still think I'm right in an argument.
Oh,
it doesn't matter. And I still know a lot of what I'm thinking is imagination and past and all like not even real, but I really want it to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're predators. We're highly competitive. Why? Of course, we're going to be that way. We're not just predators. We're the predators of predators.
Yeah. Which is kind of what brings me sort of to my next question, which is everyday gaslighting behavior.
Yes.
And so I really believe in an argument, what I see is real. And so I'm almost, like you said, we're predators. I'm almost working towards trying to get other people to believe it so that it can be real if people agree.
Yep.
So are we not just gaslighting everyone all day, every day?
That's a great question, isn't it? That was the massive question that I had to come up against. Like, what actually was, I could not work out what gaslighting was. So I was like, okay, maybe I can work out what gaslighting isn't. That is challenging as well. This is where you get in, this is where you get into the duality of reality, or duality of our own experience, which is that you have an opinion, but it might not be the right one. Like you start to, it's like a structure through which you get responsible for yourself. So you are gaslighting all the time. So right now, I'm not talking about the truth. There's nothing in what you and I are saying that's true. But because we've never gotten interested in what is true and what isn't, or what's real and what isn't, we're susceptible to thinking that what people tell you is the truth because we can't differentiate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, particularly those people that we consider of an authority, right?
100%. And they've established themselves that way. They're not there by accident. You don't find yourself running a country and go, oh, geez, how did I get here? Like, it just doesn't work like that. So, you know, they know that they're there and they use that. Like and if you're a leader, you've probably got to say, hey, I think this is the best path forward for us. But you've also got to be responsible for it. It's just an opinion. So it's getting the duality of stuff. So yes, we are gaslighting, but it brings up other question, which is that how do you be responsible? You need to communicate.
Yeah.
Like you need to express your experience of the world, what you think. We work so much better collaboratively, like together, than we do separately. Talking to yourself doesn't really get you very far, put another way.
I have this saying that is anything past 100 people in your group is a cult. There are no such thing as leaders. There are only cult leaders. And then what we have are destructive cults, so ones that actually harm people. And then we have people who are in groups convincing you of a particular way to think that you agree with that might actually be good for you and empower you. And so I think we are always determining the difference between destructive cults and then what is actually empowering and helpful and is part of what I really want to do in my life.
Okay. Why the 100? Like, what is it? What's the 100 figure?
Why the 100? That's an observation. So an observation of what I see from what I've experienced is you get organizations like not-for-profits is one example, or you get businesses that start off small, and even you get movements that start off small. And when they're in their infancy, they have so much purity in their message and what they're out to impact. And then something shifts when they start to gain momentum. And the leader actually gets a sense of, people believe me. There's something in this. And that's a very powerful experience to have someone believe you are something. And so as it grows, the original connection to why I started this tends to be lost the more and more people get involved. Now I'm observing that. I'm yet to see, and I'm happy for someone to tell me that that's not the case when it gets more than 100 people, but I'm yet to observe a person in a leadership position that has more than 100 followers that has remained 100% out of opinion, ego, and purely there to support others in establishing their own views.
It's a challenge. Yes, I would agree that it's an incredibly challenging situation because people believe stuff that isn't true. Like it's like, imagine being a leader of 100 people and they're pushing to say, "Hey, more." Like lead us.
Yeah,
Like,
they
human
are.
beings do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I want that person to come along and tell me everything I need to know in life. So to make it easier, to have the answers so I don't have to find them. It's so much easier if you have a leader and someone to mentor you through this life. It's not an easy place to be.
No.
Yeah.
No, human being is not easy.
No, which essentially is coming back to the point that everything going on and all people are basically leading cults. That's where I end up landing, is that anyone who's trying to be in leadership is not even responsible for that. As they gain momentum and followers, they actually are starting to influence the minds and brains of everyone, but they don't even know that they're doing it. And the people that are being influenced by it don't realize they're doing it either.
No, I mean, it doesn't take long for someone to work it out. I mean, it's one of the challenges you've got is this, that like, how do you lead without having people follow? Everyone's a leader. I mean, that's I think that's the challenge of calling everything a cult. And I don't, because I really wanted, I think it was really important to, you said before, like what's something that creates and empowers people as opposed to what something disempowers people. Starting to look at what is dominating and what is not dominating. It's just a difficult question to answer until you've got to look at personal responsibility. Like if someone wants to give up responsibility for their life, of course they're not going to live their life. Like someone else will come in and fill, because if you don't, you need some structure in life. Like you need to earn money. If you don't take responsibility, someone else will. I think it's just difficult to point fingers. I think it's incorrect to point fingers at leaders who are having a good crack and say you're a cult leader because you've got more than 100 people who feel empowered by you.
I know it's controversial, but if you look at the etymology of the word, it's actually quite a beautiful word. And
Yeah.
I think that's what people have. It's now associated with something negative.
Yes.
Destructive cults, where I say.
Mhm.
But the word cult is cultivation, and was originally given to kind of a spiritual sense of things, which was cultivating the essence of the divine.
Yes.
So the essence of the divine being that experience that you get when you are, whether you're in a spiritual cult or not, but this experience that you get within yourself where you feel empowered and alive and free. And it's what some consider as a peak experience. You feel very connected to everyone and the world. Yes. And so, of course, it feels believable because of that peak experience. And that peak experience, there is nothing wrong with that. In fact, some would argue that's a real true sense of alignment and the feeling of being aligned.
Yes.
Excuse me. So the word cult actually refers to that experience in a group.
Okay. Well, that's really good to define that, because I think that if without it, you leave people with what their definition as opposed to what you're actually talking from.
Yeah. Now what comes with creating and generating that experience is a lot of responsibility. And that's where that's where I argue cult leaders sometimes are not responsible, and that's where it can lead to destruction. I've observed. I mean, again.
Yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, I get where you're going. Like it is. So I'm going to step and talk something about gaslighting a bit further. So at some point on my, and it's to the point of what you're talking about here. So at some point in my journey, I realized that, or I posited to myself that had I been gaslighting myself, like sure, I'd had the experience of being gaslighted, but had I done it as well? And when I removed that victim blaming, or that blaming of the people who had gaslighted me, what I could see was if I took away all of that, I'd gaslighted myself. Like I'd made it okay that this behavior had continued for many, many years. And I'd done everything I possibly could to survive it or live with it, instead of saying, hey, that doesn't work for me, and either leaving or doing something else. What I did was gaslight myself. And at that point, I realized that gaslighting has two sides. Like you can gaslight someone, but it really does take the other person to convince themselves that what you're saying is the truth. It really, like you can't gaslight someone who has no truth. It just doesn't, because that's the psychological flaw that all gaslighting leverages. I mean, you can leverage a physical flaw to gaslight someone, but it must be attached to a psychological flaw. Like the amygdala takes information in and decides whether you're in a fight or flight response. It does that based on memories, and they're not real. So it's the psychological flaw that there's a memory that is real that defines that right now I'm in a fight, or I'm in danger, instead of 20 years ago when that memory showed up. They're two separate moments. And so instead of actually thinking it through, your amygdala just puts you into a fight or flight response. Or to talk about it again, you can use, I noticed when I was doing research, I noticed that no one ever complained if I gaslighted them and their life got better. I could use exactly the same technology
I remember you saying that to me,
Yeah.
saying that at the launch. No one
Mhm.
ever complains. And so can you give me an example of where that happened? Because I'm curious, this is what I mean by destructive versus constructive cult leading.
Yeah,
Leading.
great. I'm going to give you one right now. Jess, you're a wonderful human being. Like, I am just so pleased to have you in my life. And the value that you've added to my life is incredible. And I've really appreciated that time we sat in the chair and you pointed out that I was being serious and significant and we had a great time and a great laugh. I just spoke into something that has you believe that you are a great human being based on my view of it. It's no different than me telling you that you're a piece of crap for 20 years over and over and over again. You say
Can't
things that have
believe
people,
can't
pardon?
I can't believe you said I was serious and significant. I'm not. I was a laughs that.
That's what I mean. You told me I was serious and significant. I was like, actually, yes, you are correct. But like, that's all it takes. Like, and it's not to diminish anything that I said. Like, all the things that I said about you, or could be, they're not true. They're just my interpretation of my experience of you and who you are for me in my life.
I think what you're distinguishing here is that everything being an interpretation includes all the good stuff.
Mhm.
And yet
Yep.
we focus on the gaslighting of the bad stuff because it's never a way we ever want to see ourselves. And maybe that's my interpretation, but what I can
It's
hear,
never a no we want to see ourselves. What do you mean by that?
I mean by no one ever complains about being gaslit positively. Like I wouldn't complain
No.
about you saying that because that's a reflection of what I already believe that I want everyone else to believe.
Yep.
I want how I see myself to be how others see me, right?
Yes.
So when I did that nice thing and you reflected it back to me, I'm like, yes, I'm a good
Uh-huh.
person, right?
Yes.
But if you'd said something else, I would potentially go internal. I might
Uh-huh.
think about what you said. I'd be
Yep.
trying to weigh out whether it's right or not. I would feel a little hurt.
Yep.
I probably wouldn't because I'm way too arrogant, but I'm just saying there could be the right person could say it to me. Someone I trusted, I had that authority with me. I'm not saying that you don't, but you would. I just know you wouldn't say that.
No, it doesn't work like that. No, our
Well,
relationship.
in saying that, you probably could. If you did take a turn and authentically communicate that to me, I was just thinking that then. Yeah, I would go away. I'd think about it. I'd be like, wow, Nathan has said this about me because I could just never see you saying that. And then I would go internal. I would worry. Yeah, I'm like now starting to question myself.
Yep.
And then at some point, I make a choice and go, throw that out. Or, okay, maybe I just don't talk about that anymore. Or like I make some decision and now I'm a little bit less me. Is that what you mean?
No, it's the questioning yourself that's the point at which it's great. The rest of it you do is fine. Like, so if I was to do that, an intentional thing, I would probably know what decision you're going to make from it, or at least I can guide it. But once you question yourself, you're actually quite malleable because now there's a space that you're going to, because most people live inside of their own identity. They think that they are an identity, not just a being. And they're constantly spending most of their life trying to keep that identity alive. Like a skater boy skates, a princesses, and they keep that up. They think it's real. It's the questioning yourself, and you can actually inject something new at that point. The reality, like when you question, that's actually the point. That's the best place to be because there is no truth. But we're so caught up on the fact and on either side of it, which is the decisions, the two decisions. You notice you are like, he said something, let me consider that. I'm going to question myself. And then there's the decision of what I've made.
Yeah.
It's those things, the decisions are the things that really mess with you because now you are one way. You're right or wrong or good or bad or so it's just really easy to gaslight people. It's just, yeah. And I can do it for good or bad.
No, so you're saying gaslighting is intentionally telling someone something positive about what you'd like, even if it's authentic. That's a positive gaslight because it's not the truth. It's actually your perspective, but giving that to someone validates something in them. And so it is positive. It generally ends up giving them a better day, creating a positive energy, but it's still positive gaslighting, is what you're saying.
100%, 100%, 100%. If they don't, what's worse is that when someone believes it, they could be doing horrible things that are really disempowering to others. and make out that they're doing the right thing, that they're a great human being. Like it's this interpretation that Jess's views that she's a great human being. So she interprets what I say as agreement, as opposed to something else. And it's agreement not in reality. Like they're not interested in actually their impact out in reality. It's a really interesting duality. Like it's a really quick thing. It seems like when you talk about gaslighting, the duality of reality, our own experience of reality, is super important to grab. It's also the thing that people find the most confusing. But once they start to see the duality of reality or their own experience of it, then they start to get power around leveraging what they say. Like, did it look like I was lying before when I said those things to you?
No.
No. So I can authentically say this to you, and it's authentic.
Yeah.
All the other things, I don't have I've had negative views of you before. You've annoyed the crap out of me several times. But the beauty of being able to leverage gaslighting technology is to be able to leave to create whatever you want to create at any moment, knowing that it isn't real. Also getting that the person you're telling it to probably wants to believe it is. Hopefully they do.
Yeah.
I think negative. I forgot about this too. You were talking about negative gaslighting. It only works if you believe it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's very easy to believe good things about you. It actually feels very different when someone who you do love or recognizes you, validates you, and sees you in a way that you want to be seen. You don't question it. It's more like a relieving, like, oh, finally someone sees me. Like you don't hear it very often. So it's almost like, yeah, it's almost not questioned. That's probably the way of putting it. Whereas, that's not always true. There are people that question getting compliments, aren't they?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, they kind of blow them off, and yeah, that's true. Whereas negative gaslighting, most of the time, I'm just my own observation, is it sends people almost into some sort of primitive process of like, is it true? Am I like this? Like, what just happened? Like it sends something. Like I know even an argument with my partner where things are said that are not nice send me into that kind of process, reflecting on myself. What have I done? Is this true? Is this not true? Am I like that? Am I not like that? I did do that. But did that mean that? Right. What? And I at some point, I have to kind of like choose what to do with that experience. And one is, okay, let it go. It's just not even worth going through this kind of analysis.
Yes.
And that's where I've landed over time. But if that's happening all the time with everyone, even people we love, and the questioning is going on, that kind of leaves me with, we're all getting gaslit by each other all the time, particularly the ones we love the most.
Yep, mostly kids.
Okay, say a bit more about that.
Well, they're the blankest slate, aren't they? They come out, they know nothing. They're just beings. I'll come back to kids. I want to talk to something quickly. I just want to say this. It's gaslighting only works if it's there with you as a being, like as possibility. So it only works if it's possible and it's in your head. It might be subconscious. It's actually the best place to gaslight someone into the subconscious. When you speak into their subconscious, it's really great. But yeah, and how I've discovered this was that the German people exterminated 6 million Jews, and they're in World War II. That it wasn't Hitler. He wasn't running around with his mates doing it. Like they spoke into the what human beings are capable of doing, the atrocities we're able to do. And if it's that we don't address that we're capable of that, which allows us to continue to be susceptible to that sort of behavior, where you can actually human beings are capable of exterminating 6 million Jews in some of the most horrendous experiences that I've ever, like, you wouldn't want to live that way, let alone die that way. But they still did it. Like, we are capable of that. Like everyday human beings, we all believe that we wouldn't do it. The World War II tells us otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, and if we don't deal with that, that is something that we're capable of. It will forever be something that other people can leverage against us if we don't acknowledge it.
Now, this is a very controversial statement, what you just said, but very awesome.
Yeah, great. It's good. And it can be controversial.
Yeah.
It doesn't, let's have a conversation about that with anyone.
it's controversial because someone would say the German people and people of the German would be like, oh, I didn't do it and all of that. But that's not what Nathan is saying. He's saying that anyone in any culture right now on the planet, given that they're a human being, could have a leader that convinces them of atrocious things and be a part of the extermination, just like what happened.
100%. That's exactly right. Yeah. And to say that the German people weren't complicit absolves them of responsibility in life. They were complicit with Hitler and his team. It was not just one dude, it was a whole team. But when we see that for ourselves, we can actually start to see who we are as human beings. And there's nothing wrong with knowing that we're capable of that and acknowledging it. It's just doing it. It's probably not, doesn't work. Now, if you want to be Hitler and go and produce that result, well, hell, now's the time, Lynchins. It's all over the world. Do I think you should do that? No. But if that's what you want to do, there's no safeguards to stop it till this day, because we still don't acknowledge that everyday human beings are capable of this sort of behavior, as proved in World War II.
Which is exactly my point about anyone could be a cult leader.
Yeah.
So this is where we have similar thoughts on this. So I suggest that Hitler is like a cult leader in that sense, that he, like, if you really look at what he was doing, it's very calculated. He was intentional about what he was doing. He was in prison. He got put in prison because I can't remember what he did, because I'm mixing it up with where he was put in prison for something else. But he was put in prison for whatever he's put in prison for. And it was there that he realized, oh, well, if I'm going to become the leader, I need to be a lot more covert and have a lot more agreement, because if I do this on my own, I'll get put in prison and I won't be the leader.
Yep.
So he comes out, he's written Mein Kampf, which is essentially how to become the leader of this party and then lead everyone through this sort of revolution of getting rid of Jews and all sorts of people that are ruining society. And he does it much more calculated now. And he now comes back in to power, make sure that he gets the agreement of the right people around him. And then he sets up the opposition to him to look like they set this fire in a church, and he essentially gaslights the whole situation to look like he needed to come in and it was all the Jews' fault. And I'm really glazing over a lot of detail here, but what I'm pointing to is that he didn't go in with this authentic intention to really make a difference or positively gaslight. He actually went in with his own view that the Jews were evil and bad, and that view began to get some momentum in society. And then from there, and then there was evidence as well built around it. And then from there, he staged some incidents which led to whatever they led to. Now, that to me is cult leadership. It's someone who gained power, given agreement. Then once that agreement was gotten and got more powerful, it caused a whole lot of destruction. Like, I'd say not just cult leadership, destructive cult leadership. So you're saying the people who were involved in that whole thing, they are somehow responsible because they would have seen what was happening? Or can you say that the brainwashing itself, like that's the part that I go, who is actually responsible? Do you know what?
People with the victim complex are incredibly easy to gaslight. It's someone else's fault. Let's go after them. That's the path of Hitler. We're the victims of the Jews. Let's go. Let's get them. So it's one of the, like, I've played the victim. I tried that on. It didn't really work well for me. And when you look at it, if you don't get that you were complicit, you're just being a victim, and it's just repeating the same cycle. There is no saying that you got brainwashed. Sure, if you've never been taught or responsible for what it is that has us be flawed and able to be so easily psychologically manipulated or gaslighted. The gaslighting, I call it gaslighting technology as opposed to gaslighting, because gaslighting has a negative connotation. Gaslighting technology is, let's use this technology to produce whatever we want. I try not even have a moral stand on it. I'd prefer for us not to go down the Hitler path again, because I don't want to go to war and I don't want people to die and all that other horrible crap we're capable of. But if I have an opinion or a moral stand, now I've elevated opinions into something else, and that just gets us into a whole different world. But what was I answering? What I'm saying is that I think we're just we've got to be responsible for that we're very easily manipulated psychologically. Very easily. Happens so quick, not even aware of it.
So we can't tell the difference between what's real, what's imaginary. We're very, very easy to psychologically manipulate.
As an extension of that first one. It's not that we can't tell. We choose. Have you ever noticed when to school, no one ever taught you about what's real and what's imaginary?
Well, that I was just going to say, yeah, isn't that interesting? Like
Mhm.
that's where I go. There's a few things I wasn't taught at school that I wonder why I wasn't taught at school, but I was taught about how to do long division, which I've never used in my entire life ever since.
Yep. Yeah. And look, I would love to point the fingers at the leaders, and I've pointed the fingers at leaders and going, what, they set it up this way. They never teach us, so that leaves us malleable. I actually think that they don't know either. And because at least then we have, as human beings, we can be responsible ourselves, as opposed to pointing fingers and expecting the leaders to change. Good luck with that.
Well, I do think there's evidence to suggest that very early on, when there weren't that many people on the earth like there is today, that they worked out that the schooling system was a really great way to get people to think and have the same skills. Think similarly, be compliant, have similar skills. I don't know that they went, this will one day turn into world domination, and it will end up where it is now. I don't think that they had that foresight, but school is a very, very great tool for compliance.
Yes.
And that's why, even in the beginning, it was offered for free. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be paying for it if it was
100%. Yeah. I think a school is a good idea to teach kids about things, but we're never taught what's real and what isn't. We're never taught to maintain our being, like who we are ourselves. It's this overwhelming, get good marks for long division. Give yourself up and get good marks. And it just teaches us to think that there's right and wrong and good and bad. And then we get punished for it. Like I specifically tell my daughter, it's a game. Someone made it up. Play the game. That's what you've been asked to do. It's required by law that you go to school. And it really empowers her, because it doesn't engage in that amygdala, that life or death experience of right or wrong, of failure.
Yeah. Well, you probably have a much different conversation. Mine is, I don't care if you do your homework. It doesn't make any difference anyway. That's what I say. But that's only because, just to give context, it's only because my daughter, I asked her, I'm in a tech company. My daughter's teacher asked me to come and speak on tech in their class, and I was very excited, and he never got back to me on it. And it's a year later, and I say to my daughter, how come he didn't ask me to come and speak? And she went, oh, we hardly ever have tech class because no one can use the technology. So they stopped using the class. And I'm like, that's the issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I say to my daughter that whatever is happening in the future, I don't think schools are set up for it. But another level of that is it's all a game.
Yeah. I don't think schools are prepared for the coming psychological revolution at all. Someone said to me the other day, and complained for many, many years, actually not the other day, when I say other day, concept of time, Nathan. So like years ago when Trump came in, and they were like, oh, how bad is it? And this and that and this and that. And I was actually like, you know what? We're actually having a conversation about mental health. Like, it's a really pertinent point that the left and the right are now having this conversation about mental health and what constitutes it. And I just think it's fantastic. I think that we're even voting in someone to what's considered could be considered the most powerful position on the planet. Someone who some people would think has serious mental health issues. I think it's fantastic. We're actually starting to deal with it. Like, we can't hide anymore. It's right in our faces. And it's not a conversation about right and wrong.
No, not with you, and it wouldn't be with me either. But in some places, you can't even mention Trump without being considered someone who is like kind of a bit weird. Like if you're a Trump supporter, you're a bit weird, right? I'm neither a Trump supporter nor not a supporter. I don't live in America, but I'm interested in everything he did out of fascination, right?
He's incredibly good at what he does.
Right. So I'm fascinated by that. And yet some people in America, depending on what side they're on, would hate me for saying that. And then people who are Trump supporters would love me for saying that. It's like I'm more fascinated in that polarization and going, this is designed. Polarization in its truest sense is as designed in everything you're saying, is because we don't know what is real and what is not, we end up being in a situation where we form a view and a perception, and then that view and perception takes on this whole world of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then that means if anyone disagrees, they just get thrown into some other category, like they're an alien.
Yeah.
And
Welcome to school.
yeah, I find that fascinating. You cannot, like I've noticed sitting on, no, I wouldn't even call it sitting on the fence, but being open to exploring what's great about Trump and also what doesn't work is a very mind-boggling thing for some people.
Well, yeah, because they're one way. There is, it's either this way or that way. There's no two ways about it. There's no ability to get that. It's perception. Like reality is perception. That's it. And it's all by your own past. Like it's really difficult. Our brain doesn't even tell us that we're biased. It's just
is.
It's like what was it? I was reading the other day. I don't know if it was the truth or not. I just quickly scanned over the top of it. But if you get the Neuralink chip, the realization is that you won't even know if the Neuralink chip tells you something, you won't even know that it told you something. So we can literally modify your behavior without you even knowing that your behavior has been modified. People they shouldn't be concerned about it. It's the same in without the Neuralink chip. I was talking to someone that I've been speaking to for about 6 months. And when we first ran into each other, she had this particular behavior that she got up to with all of her friends. It was shocking. And I told my partner about it and said, like, this is what they do and blah, blah, blah. No wonder they don't have a partner in the world because they do this. Now, I reminded this person that I've been talking to for 6 months the other day about it. And they're like, huh? I don't even remember doing that. Did I even say that? It's like, she's got a partner now, but we had to deal with all the things that were in the way of her having a partner. And she doesn't even remember being that way or even the conversation. I have to tell my partner or record conversations so that they don't forget who they were, because we do. We just forget.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We are malleable, aren't we?
Oh, yes. And we think we're not.
One day we believe something, the next we don't. And then we aren't even aware that we had that belief and then it's impacted people. And then we go back and go, oh, did I think that? It's like nothing, but it may have had a huge impact on others.
We are the most sensitive sausages, human beings. It's incredible. Like we are it's incredibly easy to modify someone's path in life. You just to smile can change the path of a human being.
Yeah.
Like that's nuts. You don't even speak. And we just vote people into office and do all these things and then go, I don't know why my life's a mess. Really? Like you're just not listening. And I don't think that people get listening until they understand or they become an expert at why gaslighting works. I certainly did not get listening until I became very deeply interested in why gaslighting works.
I'm so much more fascinated to talk to you because I think I'm so ridiculously open to being gaslit. And of course it's way more significant with me, Nathan. Like
it's always significant with everyone.
I'm really open to being gaslit. You know, I was subjected to what I perceived as being in this religion, then went through that horrible 4 years when I left it because my mum left. And then when I've gotten older, I've noticed that I've taken on to beliefs and just believe them. So I was like in the Labor Party and then I went, oh, this isn't it. And then I went into the Liberal Party and I'm like, oh, this isn't it. It's no party. And then I joined spiritual groups and then I did personal growth and I joined groups in there and I felt like they were it. And I just am like, it's like I'm just on this total search for it. And so
what are you searching for? What do you mean when you're search for it? What are you searching for?
Well, I think, and so my research led me to near-death experiences and I found them fascinating and I'm like, what is it I'm looking for? And where I came to was why people are searching for cults or leaders. They're not necessarily searching for cults. They're searching for something. In my view, what I can see is that I might be here on Earth, but there's this kind of underlying belief that this is just a place I am. And then there's this other place called home. That may have came from religion or wherever it came from, but I'm here temporarily on Earth.
Yes.
And I'm really from somewhere else.
You mean like a connection to the universe?
Yeah, maybe the universe. Like, I don't know where I go when I die, but I don't think I just die and don't exist. And I know not all people believe that, but there's some belief that I will return home. And so
Okay.
I'm here on earth, but I
Mhm.
long to be home into this place that gets described in near-death experiences, just pure love and light.
Yeah.
And so I think I search for that pure love and light on earth. That's
Okay.
what I came to as a story. I made it up. But well, when I share this with people, what I notice
Yeah.
is that a lot of people relate to that experience.
Yes. I think lots of people do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
And this,
yeah, being
keep
gas,
going.
like when you talk about
Yeah.
being gaslit, is that person searching
Mhm.
for that experience and longing to be home is also very vulnerable to being cut, like really injured and hurt and wounded by
Yeah.
people that are not that experience.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's cool. If you think that there's an answer outside of you, you're generally going to be very easily gaslit.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, I don't think we're taught that the answer's internal, or more people would have that experience. Like they would have discovered it within themselves. And it's not, I think we do, like people like to be right. So I think we generally know these things. Like we know that the answer is internal. It's within us. I think that's why we think we're right. I just think no one ever actually, I don't think most people take you there. I think I've got the answers, join my club and I will lead you. And we often do that. Well, not we, I think human beings traditionally have done that.
I do it. I still do it now, even knowing that the answer's within other people. I still think they need some help because I know better. I really don't want to have this view, but here I go again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's really not easy to have people get that the answer's within them.
And hold that position as a human being as well with others.
Well, people fight. They fight so hard that no. And it is incredible to watch people fight me tooth and nail. And then they go, bing, and they're like, holy crap. Like the answer is here. But that we've just never, I just think it's either, look, I got kids. My daughter was sort of lived a lot of this life. So for her, she just knows that the answer's there with her. Like I don't fix her problems. She doesn't need to. She complains. She's like, you don't even fix my problems. I'm like, well, why would I fix your problems? They're your problems. Like you're capable. I just think that the answer's within us, but people fight it. And I want to qualify this too. Actually, I forgot to say this. I have actually had people see reality themselves, experience it as different to their thoughts, feelings, opinions, and memories and stuff.
Mm.
Because for myself, I have the experience of that. And when people get that for the first time or the 15th time, whatever, have a number of times, I had a guy ask me to teach him how to gaslight. Like, how does gaslighting technology work? And I taught him. And he said he got what he calls bare metal. Like he can actually generate what's real, or people might define as being for 10, 20 minutes, like that experience of nothing when you meditate. So that's what I mean when I say I think the answer is within us and we know it. It's just, we got to get that we're a being with an imagination. We're not a being trapped inside of it.
Yeah. Well, we need to wrap up because
We do.
we almost have gone over time now. And somehow we need to bring a conclusion here.
Okay. Gaslighting 101. What's
We
the
did it.
conclusion?
Oh, well, I guess we don't promise conclusions here. It's more of an exploration. It's
Yeah.
probably for me at least, and you can speak for yourself, but it's like this will open my own mind just having these conversations. I'm not here to, as much as I might sound like it at times, and I'm just going to caveat by saying anything that I have said today is not the truth. It is my view, despite how convicted I sounded that I wanted you to believe it, which is a part of my own gaslighting strategy on others. It is not the truth. It is not the truth. And I can sound very righteous and think that I know better. But I think for me, at least, ending this is that we are all capable of this. And it's not, I think what I got from what you said is it's not that being a gaslighter is somewhere someone else is going to do that. No, we potentially could be doing it all the time. And we could repeat this in history, what happened with Hitler or other things, if we don't collectively come to the awareness that we're capable of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. How would I like to finish up? I would like to finish up and if you don't live inside of your imagination, it now becomes a tool through which you can create and solve problems. I think that's super cool. Like it's great that we could get responsible for that. We could create another horrible experience by not being responsible for our own propensity to be manipulated psychologically and manipulate ourselves. But hell, could you imagine if we could just wield our imagination like a tool, that we weren't caught up in fighting with each other because one person thought they were right, another person thought they were wrong. And it's not a dream. It is actually possible. Like we do have that propensity and the opportunity to do that. So I reckon leverage gaslighting technology as hard as you can. Become exceptional at it.
For good.
For whatever you want. For whatever you want. Because look, who am I to tell you what you should do with your life? I
noticed myself have to want to say it has to be used for good.
I know, you've got to be moral about it.
No,
and it took me a lot of practice to let go of being moral. Because a moral is just an opinion that I've decided to elevate above opinion status to be more true than an opinion. Like that's just dumb. Like it just skews my reality.
I do
People use cars for bad, people use cars for good.
Yeah, I was the only thing I would say is that for the most part, when you hear use gaslighting technology for whatever you want, there is a concern of wherever it's like AI. Like I love AI. I work in a company that's AI, and it can be used for good and it can be used for evil. It's both.
100%. But then don't get caught in analysis paralysis. Actually get out and try to be intentional with it. Most people just use it like they just spray it everywhere and then wonder why people around them are a mess. Like it takes nothing to say, hey, you're awesome. Be intentional about what you're creating in the world. And don't try to get it right because you probably won't take an action. If you're concerned about doing gaslighting well, I can assure you that you've been doing it badly for your entire life. So any step in the direction of using it intentionally is probably going to bring you towards some positive outcome in your world. Most gaslighters who use it for bad are garbage gaslighters. Let me just put it out that way. Because they've got to use it one way. Garbage, garbage, garbage. I've met plenty of them.
This is awesome. So just taking the case that this will be watched for a very long time in the future. If you have any questions, considering what we're saying here is gaslight away, go for it. If you have any questions, if that doesn't make sense, and if you're not really clear on its purest intention, please do reach out and put a comment in and we will respond. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back with another episode shortly.
Awesome.
Thanks, Nick.